around and decided to throw
Yeah, we're live. Hi, guys.
the red carpet out to us, then yanking it out from under our feet.
City Hall responded to it's called the Shoreline City Hall. They responded to the cancelled event. Here's what they said. It was neither the department's nor the city's intent.
Welcome to the Watchman channel. This channel is all about world news and Bible prophecy, pointing to the soon return of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. I am asking that if you can, to please help to financially support this ministry. If you feel led to pledge any amount of money, it would be extremely helpful and greatly appreciated. There is a PayPal link
Hi,
in the
Diane. Good to
description
see
box
you.
and in my pinned comment below. You can also donate using Cash App. My cash tag is $Watchman 1963. Thank you all so much for your prayers and support. God bless. Jesus said, as a sign of his coming and the end of the age, there would be an increase in deception, false Christs who will deceive many, wars and rumors of wars, nation against nation and kingdom against kingdom, famines, pestilences, earthquakes, Christian persecution, apostasy, false prophets, and lawlessness, causing the love of many to grow cold. Jesus said all of these signs would come like birth pains. Jesus was likening last day.
Diane, that lawlessness, that's hitting everywhere. I was telling you the other day how we got a bad youth problem in our country towns. They're running amok. And you had them two girls charged with that. Yeah, the kids are running amok, the lawlessness.
These events to a woman in labor. As the labor progresses, the pains increase in both frequency and intensity until the baby finally comes. As we get closer to Jesus' return, all the signs he gave us as a sign of his coming and the end of the age will become more frequent and more intense. All of these signs are manifesting around the world in our time. 2 Timothy 3:12. Yes, and all who desire to live godly in Christ Jesus will suffer persecution. John 15:18 through 20. If the world hates you, you know that it hated me before it hated you. If you were of the world would love its own. Yet because you're not of the world, but I chose you out of the world, therefore the world hates you. Remember the word that I said to you, a servant is not greater than his master. If they persecuted me, they will also persecute you.
A Seattle coffee shop cancelled its upcoming Coffee with a Cop event. Why was it cancelled? Because the owner is a Christian and expressed a Christian point of view, or his Christian point of view. The CEO of Pilgrim Coffee House and head pastor of Epic Life Church, Keith Carpenter, joins me now. What particular point of view around Christianity did you express that turned people off?
Our church stands with a biblical point of view on marriage and between a husband and wife. And people in the city didn't really like that.
Do you think perhaps the city council objected to you having inviting police officers? They're not exactly popular in that part of the world.
Well, here's the thing is the city council actually invited the police officers to our coffee shop. And so that's where it became kind of rough. It was neighbors who decided that we were doing the wrong thing, that the city was doing the wrong thing. The city came around and decided to throw us under the bus after rolling the red carpet out to us, then yanking it out from under our feet.
City Hall responded to it's called the Shoreline City Hall, that's the name of it. They responded to the cancelled event. Here's what they say. It was neither the department's nor the city's intent to make any community member feel unwelcome based on the selection of the event venue and the values that the venue may or may not hold. When planning future events, we'll be more intentional with our venue selection. Did you get any negative comments now?
I can't even tell you how many negative comments I'm getting online telling me how terrible I am as a human, and just the vitriol online is pretty disgusting, to tell you the truth. You know, we're just a small church in Seattle and trying to do something fairly risky, taking the church outside the walls and onto the street in a place that's really rough and has a lot of human tragedy. And we're trying to bring this expression of Christ's love to the street in a way that people can be engaging with coffee and sit for a while. And our purpose there was to welcome all people.
Matthew 5:10 through 12. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when they revile and persecute you, and say all kinds of evil against you falsely for my sake. Rejoice and be exceedingly glad, for great is your reward in heaven. For so they persecuted the prophets who were before you. Remember to pray for our persecuted brothers and sisters in Christ. Remember the prisoners as if chained with them, those who are mistreated, since you yourselves are in the body also. Hebrews 13:3, 1 Corinthians 12:26. And if one member suffers, all the members suffer with it. Or if one member is honored, all the members rejoice with it. 1 Corinthians 16:13. Watch, stand fast in the faith, be brave, be strong.
President Trump delivered an ultimatum to Iran over its nuclear program. Come to the negotiating table or face military consequences.
The president threatened to bomb Iran if it doesn't cooperate.
Trump's warning came in an interview with NBC News over the weekend. He said, if the Iranians don't make a deal, there will be bombs, and they will be bombs like they've never seen before. Iran rejected Trump's recent offer of direct negotiations and left the door open to indirect talks. The UN agency.
I thought the Shah told Trump to go and get it. Pretty sure that's what he showed yesterday.
Overseeing Iran's nuclear program says the regime has sped up its uranium enrichment and now has enough that's just one step away from creating 6 nuclear bombs. In the meantime, the U.S. is noticeably building an armada of B-2 and B-52 bombers in the Indian Ocean at the joint U.S.-UK base of Diego Garcia.
Keep in mind, the B-2 bomber was essentially built specifically to bomb the nuclear facilities in Iran. They have the capability of lifting what they call a massive ordnance penetrator, the largest bunker buster bomb the United States possesses.
CBN News military analyst Chuck Holton says,
Diane, remember Prophecy with Stan? He goes on about that Alex Demetriou, whatever, however you pronounce it. And Alex Demetriou says the civil war with America will start with the socialists. And what Trump's done with the Jove, or however you pronounce it, what he's done there is taken all their money off them, and they're out on the streets protesting. So this could be the start of a civil war. Especially they reckon Tesla cars. Trump will send the coppers after them, you watch.
President Trump's statements are unprecedented.
The real question is, President Trump has said that if Iran does not come to the negotiating table within 2 months, that there will be military strikes. He said that repeatedly, not even equivocating at all, that there will be military strikes on Iran. That's something the United States has not done before. So this will be pretty historic.
Iran announced they would attack the base if the U.S. takes military action against Iran. On Sunday, Iran's supreme leader called for the destruction of Israel.
It's a religious, moral, and human duty for everyone to work toward removing this wicked criminal entity from the region.
In Jerusalem, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu sent a message to 3 major terrorist enemies.
Regarding Hamas.
Do you know what? Netanyahu should just go in and bomb the dome of the Rock Muslim synagogue, or what do they call it, mosque. He should go in and just blow it up. Bugger the Muslims. You're not going to get peace with them, so you might as well strike first.
In Gaza, the military pressure works. Regarding Hezbollah in Lebanon, there is very firm enforcement, very firm without compromise. Regarding the Houthis, I greatly appreciate the action of the United States, our ally. They're handling them very strongly.
Pay close attention to what the Iranian leadership is saying. So they're in the face of, we're going to bomb you if you don't give up your nuclear plans. You don't come to a negotiating table and say, we're not trying to acquire nuclear weapons. In the face of that, they double down and they say Israel has to be eliminated. It has to be wiped off the map. That kind of ideology, you just can't dismiss and say, well, let's just talk. It's not just talk. It is what they have adhered to for decades, and the reason they have have put so much funding and weapons into the hands of Hezbollah and into the hands of Hamas, it's all based on that ideology to wipe Israel off the map. We've become distracted in the West, and we have voices on our college campuses saying Israel is trying to have some kind of genocide. No, Israel is just trying to exist. It's the other side that wants the genocide, that literally wants to wipe them off the map. If Iran gets nuclear weapons, they will absolutely use it on Tel Aviv. We have to pay attention to this. This is a clear and present danger.
Psalm 83:4. They have said, "Come, and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be remembered no more." As a sign of his coming and the end of the age, Jesus declares, "And you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom." The prophets of the Old Testament prophesied of these future military conflicts in Isaiah 17:1, in which Damascus, Syria will be destroyed in a single night. Jeremiah 49, the prophecy of Elam, which could infer an Israeli attack upon Iran's nuclear program. Psalm 83, in which the Muslim nations that border Israel will mount an attack on Israel in order to cut them off from being a nation. Ezekiel 38 and 39, known as the War of Gog and Magog. In this prophecy, a coalition of nations led by Russia, Iran, and Turkey will attack Israel in the last days in order to take Israel's wealth.
Charged vehicles and debris litter the streets here in Dnipro. It's the aftermath of a Russian drone attack on the eastern Ukrainian city. Dozens of buildings suffered significant damage. This resident lost everything.
The strike hit right in the middle of the garden, and then it spread here. Everything caught fire. My wife was the only one home. She didn't even have time to grab the documents. She ran out and sat here in the garden. And the cats, the dogs, where are they? They're burned. The whole house burned down.
According to a local Ukrainian official, Russia targeted Dnipro with more than 24 drones late Friday. The attack killed several people and wounded more than 20 others. Moscow launched more than 170 drones towards Ukraine overnight, also hitting the central city of Kryvyi Rih. This according to Volodymyr Zelensky, who has called on the West to put more pressure on the Kremlin to come to a peace.
Diane, it's just disaster after disaster for America. All these the natural disasters, the climate disasters. It's getting crazy, isn't it?
Deal.
Russia must be forced to peace. Only
Put a suit on your bum.
coercion will work. For too long now, America's proposal for an unconditional ceasefire has been on the table without an adequate response from Russia. This says a lot.
Elsewhere, Russian drones hit a military hospital and apartment blocks in Kharkiv on Saturday, killing and injuring several people. The Russian military, meanwhile, continues to claim advances on the ground.
Jesus said, as a sign of his coming and the end of the age, there would be civil wars, as we read in Matthew 24, 6 and 7. And you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. Nation is the Greek word ethnos, which means a race, as of the same habit, i.e., a tribe, especially a foreign, non-Jewish one, Gentiles, usually by implication, pagan. Matthew 24, 6 and 7 could be translated like this. And you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For race will rise against race, and kingdom against kingdom. This is exactly what we are seeing in our world today.
A grueling journey into one of the world's harshest deserts. 5 flights, culminating in a rough landing on a dirt airstrip. The heat hits immediately, a reminder of the unforgiving environment. CBN News joined a World Vision convoy at the southern edge of the Sahara to document what's been described as the largest humanitarian crisis in the world today. Aid workers here help refugees escaping Sudan's brutal war between the country's military and what's known as the Rapid Support Forces, or RSF. Here, the faces of those displaced tell stories of unimaginable loss.
I've been to a number of refugee situations around the world. This is one of the worst I've seen.
For nearly 2 years, the conflict has displaced 14 million people, with some fleeing to neighboring countries like...
Okay, we had Sudanese refugees come into our country 2010s, like 2001 to 2010. a lot of Sudanese come in. And when they got to the suburbs, they start robbing the local drug dealers and taking over. They run around with machetes and they take over people selling pop from the house, just selling a few sticks here and there. They take over or bash them and take all their drugs. They don't assimilate. These guys don't assimilate.
Chad for safety. In the distance there, you will see Sudan. So these are folks who escaped the war coming into Chad. The last 2 years, close to about 700,000 Sudanese folks, like this gentleman right here, they have come across this border. Chad is just one of several countries today in the region that is providing shelter to hundreds of thousands of Sudanese. At the border, UNHCR worker Mohammed Abakar registers mostly women and children.
When I talk with them, some of them tell me that their husbands were killed. Some of the women say they were raped. They come with just a small sack that has their clothes. They don't even have food to eat.
CBN News met Miriam Ahmed.
Who raped them? Who's the villains here?
Ishaq crossing the border on a donkey. Her emotions, a mix of relief and sorrow.
I lost all my belongings, all my clothes, the furniture, the utensils. They put fire to my house and destroyed everything.
With more than 60,000 dead, the existing human toll is unimaginable suffering, like that of Maha, who escaped just before RSF troops surrounded her village.
They raped girls in front of us. They killed people in front of our eyes. I didn't think I would survive. The war has killed 2 of my brothers. One is missing. We don't know where he is. We don't even know if he's alive or dead.
The true damage is not just in numbers.
The RSF came to our home and shot my husband in front of me. They looted everything, then burned the house down. My husband survived, but it's taking a while for him to heal.
These stories of trauma, loss, and survival echo through the refugee camps. Women expressing to us overwhelming fear of not knowing the fate of loved ones.
My husband is a cattle herder. He went to the market to sell cattle the day the fighting started. That was almost 2 years ago. I've not heard from him since. I don't know if he's dead or alive.
Well, the odds are he's not alive.
Over 60% of Sudan's population is in desperate need of help,
Hey, Trace,
including 16 million children. A UN report states more than 200 children, some as young as 1, have been raped in Sudan within the last year.
This is an example of the fact that this is being used.
Hear that? Kids as young as 1 are being SA'd, sexually assaulted. Wow.
As a weapon of war in Sudan.
I wonder what religion they are. I don't think they're Christians. I think they're Muslims, people from Chad.
By all parties to the conflict, and no woman or child is safe.
We know that we are all created by God. These are brothers and sisters who are in pain. These are people who have not chosen to be in the conditions they are. I believe that it is our duty to take care of the weakest among us.
World Vision and other agencies serve meals to some 70,000 young Sudanese refugees each day.
This is a program we are implementing in partnership with the World Food Program. We received these rations, and our team as World Vision are in charge of making sure that the children have cooked and hot meals on a daily basis.
CBN News arrived at a makeshift school as cooks prepared meals.
See how the women are so covered up? This has got to be a Muslim nation. It's in the middle of the desert, and they're making them wear hooded clothes, like, what do they call them, jihadis or whatever?
While the food is simple, rice, beans, and oil, for these children, it's the difference between hunger and survival.
This food we are giving them is better than what they are getting in the refugee camp.
Good afternoon.
The school's principal, himself a victim of the war, says this food program serves as a vital incentive for keeping children in class.
This food support is super crucial. The children enjoy coming to school to study, and because they get meals each day, no students wants to miss class. Attendance is near.
Okay, we got that in our country town schools. They put breakfast on to get the Aborigines to show up to school because they're well known for not going to school and doing things like that. So they put out a meal for breakfast for them to encourage them to come to the school. I don't know how effective it is though.
Perfect, and this is good.
As you can imagine, trying to get clean, safe, and reliable water here in the Sahara Desert is no easy feat. So a couple of months ago, World Vision dug this borehole and is today running about 2.5 miles of piping, transporting this desperately needed water to the main hospital here.
Hey, Johnny, good to see you.
And it means everything. You know, without that water at the clinic, you have women coming to deliver their babies, carrying a bucket of water themselves, or not having enough water because they don't have access.
In Fashana, Chad, we visited one of the only clinics in the area.
Check that out. They drill one hole for water, and that changes the whole area. That's pretty cool.
It's filled with mothers and babies, many battling malnutrition. World Vision's newly installed solar panels also provide electricity, ensuring that this lifeline stays open.
For us, access to water and electricity have been truly paramount.
Despite overwhelming challenges, the strength and resilience of these families offer a glimmer of hope. The quiet love for their children and the hope of returning to Sudan one day keeps them going.
A weekend of dangerous weather ripping across the country. Tonight, Miami, the latest city getting hit with storms. In Louisiana, neighborhoods near Baton Rouge underwater after this weekend's torrential rain. Misery in the Midwest, too. Look at this. Frozen branches snapping and falling onto power lines, sparking flames. Power out for hundreds of thousands across the Great Lakes.
Wow.
And you can see why. This power station completely covered in ice. It's been a weekend of extreme temperatures, too, with New York City hitting a high of 81. Head north to Vermont, digging out in below freezing temperatures in the 20s. Weather whiplash as millions brace for more treacherous storms ahead.
This morning, millions of Americans bracing for severe storms as the week starts off with wild weather in many states still drying off and thawing.
Man, you guys are getting caned really bad. Wow.
Now, possible tornadoes touching down in the Midwest and Southeast.
Beautiful tornado, dude.
Strong winds racing through Indiana.
We have multiple trees down, multiple power lines down.
Buildings destroyed and trees crashing into power lines and homes. In Michigan, the roof ripped off this elementary school. Playground equipment smashed to pieces.
When I pulled up to the building and saw the roof membrane laying over the side of the building, it truthfully brought tears to my eyes.
The flooding in Queensland is the worst for at least 50 years. Here's some of the latest from Channel 7.
1,000 kilometres from the coast, Bajunda is an island in a browned inlet.
I was telling you we're getting hit with floods as well. Really bad floods.
An ocean. The streets are swimmable, homes, the school, even the...
And guys, there's crocodiles up in Queensland. So do the crocodiles swim into the streets when the water overflows?
Church, the outback, a pillar of the state's agriculture industry, risks buckling under an environmental, financial and emotional disaster.
This rain event, which should have saved us all and we needed, it's just gone too far.
The 1974 record flood level under serious threat, prolonged isolation is guaranteed.
We'll be cut off here for I'll be cut off for a month or more, I'd say, but anyway, we'll deal with that. We've done it before.
A sleepless night as Barkerminda locals race to erect a temporary levee to protect their tiny town against the approaching torrent of floodwaters. But it still couldn't keep the water out.
Wow.
Many woke in the middle of the night as water gushed into their homes.
Last night was a bit post-apocalyptic. Everybody was running around getting themselves sorted.
12 homes were inundated. forcing the evacuation of nearly 100 residents.
Very telling, apocalyptic. He's very spot on there.
And it's still rising. The new top mode of transport, kayaks, tinnies, and blow-up tubes, doubling as delivery services. Upstream, floodwaters are slowly receding, laying bare the extent of the
Get me a cold can of beer and I'll sit on the roof and wait for a helicopter.
devastation. The magnitude of stock losses unknown and yet to be realised.
The area of land covered by floodwater at the moment in Western Queensland is double the size of Victoria.
This is what the vast majority of roads in the southwest currently look like. Vital supply routes turned to river rapids and expected to remain that way for some time. The only way to get around at the moment is by air, and even that's proving to be a challenge in its own right. Now, concerns with more rain forecast for midweek. What progress has been made could be undone.
Jesus said a sign of his return would be more frequent and more intense weather, as we read in Matthew 24:7 and 8.
Did.
And there will be famines, pestilences, and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of birth pains. Pestilence is the Greek word moimus, which means a plague. Definition of a plague is any large-scale calamity, especially when thought to be sent by God. God has used plagues in the form of extreme weather in the past and will again in the future. The seventh plague on Egypt was hail. Don't forget about the famine in Joseph's time. One of the biggest is the flood in the book of Genesis. In the future, during the 7-year tribulation, God will once again use extreme weather in the form of pestilence as judgment. In Revelation 16:21, God uses hailstones weighing 100 pounds each, and great hail from heaven fell upon men, each hailstone about the weight of a talent. Men blasphemed God because of the plague of the hail, since that plague was exceedingly great. In Revelation 16:8 and 9, God uses scorching heat. Then the fourth angel poured out his bowl on the sun, and power was given to him to scorch men with fire. And men were scorched with great heat, and they blasphemed the name of God who has power over these plagues, and they did not repent and give him glory. So when Jesus Christ warns us that just before his second coming, there will be famines, pestilences, and earthquakes in various places, you had better believe that these occurrences are a sign from God and that he is about to intervene. Psalm 18:7. Then the earth shook and trembled. The foundations of the hills also quaked and were shaken, because he was angry.
The massive earthquake in Southeast Asia on Friday has killed more than 1,700 people. Most of the dead are in Myanmar, near the epicenter of the quake. The military government there is asking for help. Rescuers are running out of time to save survivors.
Lying on his stomach, aided by torchlight, the rescuer detects signs of life. It's been days since a deadly earthquake struck Myanmar, but remarkably, this woman is lifted out of the rubble unscathed. She was among a handful of survivors to be rescued, along with this man, sandwiched between slabs of concrete.
Hello.
But they are the lucky ones, as building after building in Myanmar's second largest city, Mandalay, and beyond, lie in ruins.
Wow.
Damaged roads, bridges, and downed power lines have made it impossible for rescue teams to reach communities in this impoverished country.
I wonder what their religion is. I suspect Islam.
Engulfed by 4 years of civil war since the military junta seized power in a coup. Hours after the earthquake, reports the junta carried out airstrikes in rebel-controlled areas that had also been impacted, adding to the misery. Meanwhile, in Thailand, hope is fading at the construction site, where dozens of workers were buried in the skyscraper.
I know Thailand, they're Buddhists. I know they're Buddhists. Is their main religion.
It collapsed moments after the earthquake hit. Rescue crews, with the help of cadaver dogs, continue to retrieve bodies as families keep vigil, refusing to lose faith their loved ones will be found alive.
Isaiah 24:19 through 21. The earth is violently broken. The earth is split open. The earth is shaken exceedingly. The earth shall reel to and fro like a drunkard. It shall totter like a hut. Its transgression shall be heavy upon it, and it will fall and not rise again. It shall come to pass.
Shawnee, it changes what you type, doesn't it? You got to check when you finish what you actually type, because they've auto-corrected it and it makes you look stupid. Not you personally, but whoever does it.
Yes, in that day that the Lord will punish on high the host of exalted ones, and on the earth the kings of the earth.
Mandalay's Sky Villa,
a condo complex thought to be the hardest hit by the quake. More than 400 people lived here, 10 confirmed dead. Locals think there could be as many as 80 bodies inside. Through the day, the bereaved arrive, calling out in vain for their loved ones to return. Inside the building is desperately precarious.
We have already taken out more than 50 people, but there are others trapped in the car park area and other places, so we're trying to reach them too.
For now, they're focused on one narrow room, partially collapsed. Inside, 4 people, 2 already dead and 2 alive. The rescue workers are just down there discussing what equipment they need to bring in here. There's a survivor in there. They say they've only got a 30-minute window. Tutu Win, 35 years old, 3 months pregnant. She's breathing, but she's trapped. At ground level, a Chinese search and rescue team leader explains the situation to her sister. They had to cut off her leg to get her out. It's a difficult decision, but they have no choice. As the afternoon wears on, equipment sent up to the room. The heat is exhausting. But there's another major obstacle. Aftershocks that send everyone dashing out. After a pep talk, they head back in. These are all volunteers from Myanmar and beyond. No sign.
God bless them, look at that.
The hours pass and the sun sets. The half-hour deadline is long past. The exhaustion is showing on the rescue teams. Finally, gingerly, they carry Tutu Lun out, carefully passed from hand to hand. But despite their efforts, this will be her final journey. By the time she arrived at the hospital, she's pronounced dead.
Luke 21:26 through 28.
Wow,
Men's hearts
that
are
was
failing them
terrible.
from fear and the expectation of those things which are coming on the earth. For the powers of the heavens will be shaken. Then they will see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. Now, when these things begin to happen, look up and lift up your heads, because your redemption draws near. The signs of Jesus' soon return are so strong now, and the evidence is so clear, that any person willing to accept the truth can see that the end of the world, as we know it, is near. For God so loved the world, that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. But God demonstrates his own love toward us, in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. For the wages of sin is death, but the gift of God is eternal life in Christ Jesus our Lord. That if you confess with your mouth the Lord Jesus and believe in your heart that God has raised him from the dead, you will be saved. These are the ABCs of salvation. A. Admit that you're a sinner. B. Believe in your heart that Jesus Christ died for your sins, was buried, and God raised him from the dead. C. Call upon the name of the Lord, and you will be saved. Jesus paid the price for mankind's sin. He has provided.
Video that I don't know that I have a good answer to, and I'd like to know your thoughts. Hey everybody, Josh Peck here. Hope you're doing well. Well, we are going to be getting into some recent developments in scientific circles that really sound like Nephilim experimentations and a probable return to the days of Noah that Jesus warned us about when speaking of the end times. I think we're right there. We're right at the doorstep. Now, if you haven't had a chance, make sure you subscribe, click the bell to turn on all notifications. That would be great. And if you want the show notes to this, also make sure you share and like the video, comment, all that stuff. Because I do have a very important question at the end of this video that I don't know that I have a good answer to, and I'd like to know your thoughts. Also, if you want the show notes to this, a couple different ways you can do it. It's basically like an article that just goes through everything that we're talking about. If you want it just as a blog post, joshpeck.substack.com is the best place to do that. You can also get the audio-only version of this video and everything else that we do if you just want the podcast audio-only version, if you're driving in the car or whatever. Or if you want to download the PDF and actually have it on file, for yourself, you can do that at dailyrenegade.com. Just become a member there, and then you get all of the full videos that we do, stuff that we don't put on YouTube because of censorship issues. Okay, so first I'm going to give some history some biblical history on some of this stuff and extra biblical history, like things from the Dead Sea Scrolls, Book of Enoch, stuff like that. And then I'm going to tell you of some obvious examples of rebellion against God in these regards. But then after that, I'm going to tell you of another case that's a bit more difficult to pin down. And when we get there, I want you to think, is this rebellion, or is this purely altruistic, or is it somewhere in between? So let's get into it. The Dead Sea Scrolls discovered near Qumran between 1947 and 1956 include fragments of the Book of Enoch and the Book of Giants, which talk about the Watchers' rebellion against God. These texts...
Tracy, they blame it on Trump's tariffs. They say Trump's tariffs are really upsetting the world market. That seems to be right.
Describe the Watchers, a group of angels, not only as progenitors of human-angel hybrids, but also as mad scientists corrupting animals through unnatural unions. Today, human scientists are participating in these same sins, but a bit more on that later. Now, the Book of Enoch, specifically the section known as the Book of the Watchers, First Enoch 1 through 36, is well represented among the Dead Sea Scrolls, with fragments found in caves such as 4Q201, 4Q202. In First Enoch 6 through 7, the Watchers, led by figures like Semyaza, descend to Earth driven by lust for human women. Chapter 7, 1 through 10 states that they took wives for themselves and taught them sorcery, leading to the birth of the Nephilim, described as giants who devastated the earth. This directly ties to Genesis 6:4, where the sons of God mate with the daughters of men, producing mighty men of old. The Scrolls version, however, adds more detail, giving us some more information about the Watchers' deliberate defiance of God's order. Now, beyond human hybrids, human-angel hybrids, First Enoch 7:5 tells us more of their sin. It says that they began to sin against birds and beasts and reptiles and fish, and to devour one another's flesh and drink the blood. So this passage shows us that the Watchers corrupted the natural order by engaging with animals in some way, possibly creating hybrid creatures or inciting chaos among the species. Now, while the Bible itself does not mention animal hybrids specifically, this does go along with the corruption described in Genesis 6:11 through 12, where all flesh had corrupted their way on the earth. And this, of course, prompted God's judgment with the flood. Fragments from the Dead Sea Scrolls, like 4Q204, preserve parts of this narrative, and this reinforces the idea that the Watchers' actions extended beyond just humanity. They sinned against the animals, too. Now, the Book of Giants, another Dead Sea Scroll text found in fragments such as 1Q23, 4Q203, 4Q530, and so on. This further explores this idea. It names individual Watchers and their offspring, the giants, and tells of their widespread corruption. So in 4Q530, the giant Oya recounts a dream of judgment, telling of the consequences of their actions. Now, though this is less explicit about animal hybrids, the text does describe the giants' destructive behavior, which some scholars interpret as an outgrowth of the Watchers tampering with creation, which would include animals. And this connects to Genesis 6:7, where God resolves to destroy both man and beast due to pervasive wickedness. Now, these extra-biblical accounts portray the Watchers' sin as a twofold rebellion, creating human-angel hybrids, the Nephilim, and defiling animals, thus violating God's boundaries for creation. So while the Bible focuses on the human aspect and the resulting violence, such as in Genesis 6:13, the Dead Sea Scrolls amplify this into a cosmic scandal, detailing forbidden knowledge and unnatural acts. So when we time all this out, these sins would have been committed during the time of Noah, and as Jesus told us, the end times would be like the days of Noah. Well, we are certainly seeing that playing out now. So let's get into a couple of examples.
And as in the days of Noah, they never pick up all the floods around the world. You just seen a bunch of floods 5 minutes ago, and they never mentioned in the days of Noah. They're floods. What more can you say?
So there have been some recent scientific developments that may intrigue those of us who study unusual Bible passages like the account of the Nephilim in Genesis 6:4. Researchers have conducted an experiment with potentially dangerous implications for understanding the boundaries between human and animal creation. Scientists at the Max Planck Institute for Psycholinguistics in Germany have introduced a human gene known as FOXP2 into mice, resulting in observable changes to the animal's vocalization. This is a human mouse hybrid that they've created. This study, published in a reputable scientific journal, explores the genetics of language. So the FOXP2 gene is recognized for its role in human speech and language development. Now, obviously, animals weren't meant to be able to speak when we read through the Bible because, of course, we know that it was Adam who named the animals. We learn about that in Genesis 2.
Okay, didn't a donkey stop and his master was beating a donkey and the donkey said, "Can't you see the angel in front of us?" I know I haven't got it exactly right, but that is in there in the Bible. Yet he's suggesting that animals can't talk.
19 through 20. So in this experiment, the researchers inserted the human version of this gene into mice, which naturally possess their own variant of FOXP2. The results were striking. The genetically modified mice produced ultrasonic vocalizations, high-pitched sounds inaudible to the human ear that were measurably different from those of unmodified mice.
Wow.
Specifically, the altered mice emitted calls with a lower frequency and a more complex structure. Basically, the human gene influenced their ability to communicate in ways not typical of their species.
Wow.
Now, for us Christians who know about the Nephilim, described again as the offspring of the sons of God and the daughters of men, beings of extraordinary nature, this research brings up questions about the limits that God has set within his creation. This involves transferring a uniquely human trait into a lower creature. Now, the mice did not gain the ability to speak human languages or anything like that, but their altered squeaks indicate that a single gene can bridge, in a small way, the gap between species. Yet, remember in Genesis that God said his creations are supposed to reproduce after their own kind. He set barriers in place, and these scientists are actively trying to tear those barriers down. And I wonder how God feels about that. Well, it seems pretty obvious.
I remember when they created Dolly the sheep, and I wasn't even Christian at the time, and I thought, geez, God's going to be pissed off with that because we're demanding he puts a soul into our clones. So, yeah.
No one gets into full-time ministry to make money. At least no one should. Given that, Daily Renegade accepts donations from those who care to help keep us going. Now, because Daily Renegade does not want to be told by the government what we can and can't say, we're not 501c3. So your donations are not tax deductible, but that's not why you're giving anyway, to get something back for yourself. Speaking of which, we here are never going to promise that if you donate, God will reward you with even more financial success. We're not about making promises for God here. But what I can promise is your donations are very much appreciated and help the continuation of everything we do here at Daily Renegade to reach the world with the truth of the Bible. Also, as many of you know, my son Nathan has had some very serious medical issues that we are treating with good, all natural and holistic remedies. But of course, those are very expensive and are not covered by insurance. So your donations help go towards his health care as well. If you can't afford to donate, you can always donate your time in prayer, which is far more valuable anyway. Let's be serious. So pray for our wisdom, pray for God's guidance for us, and that we never lose focus on what's really important, which is using Daily Renegade as a light of truth that the world so desperately needs right now, especially in these times. As always, thank you so much for your generosity, and I pray God blesses you greatly. The study's lead researcher, Professor Simon Fisher, emphasized that his work aims to uncover how genetic mechanisms shape communication, offering insights into human development rather than creating talking mice. Now, ethically, the experiment adhered to strict guidelines, ensuring that the mice were not harmed, although I would call that harm, though it raises broader considerations about the stewardship of creation as outlined in Genesis 1:28. So for us Christians thinking about these findings, this is a reminder of the sins of the Watchers, tearing down boundaries to create a new kind of organism, the Nephilim. Well, there's more. Another recent scientific study reported in Newsweek offers a terrifying glimpse into the manipulation of creation. So researchers in Portugal altered the DNA of mouse embryos, resulting in specimens that developed 6 limbs, specifically an additional pair of legs in place of their reproductive organs. This experiment focused on a gene known as TGFBR1, and it's said to shed light on the mechanisms governing embryonic development. But those of us that know better can see this as another attempt to break the boundaries of God's created order.
Yeah.
So the TGFBR1 gene plays a critical role in directing the formation of body structures during early development.
Diane, that's what the tariffs are about. He wants to do the tariffs so he can do away with your internal tax system. He wants to get rid of that and use the tariffs. If he's got that plan, that's a better plan, if that's true.
When scientists deactivated this gene in mouse embryos, the expected layout of limbs and reproductive organs shifted dramatically. Instead of the typical anatomy, these embryos grew 2 extra legs where reproductive organs would normally form, revealing how a single genetic change can profoundly alter physical outcomes. Now, this study, led by researcher Moises Malo, aimed to explore the regulation of developmental processes. But of course, they say the goal was not to produce viable mutant creatures, but still, I mean, they are still clearly playing God. The creation of a 6-limbed mouse through genetic intervention, of course, reminds us of unnatural combinations, reminiscent of the sins of the fallen angels in Scripture. Scientists today are repeating the same kind of sins, and this just keeps going and going and going. Now, here's another one that I want all of your opinions on. Because at first it seems obvious, but then the more you think about it, it's I don't even know if this is gray area, but I'd be curious to know what you think about it. So a recent medical achievement at Massachusetts General Hospital, this is another one that should make us all think about the boundaries of God's creation. So surgeons there successfully transplanted a genetically modified pig kidney into a human patient. And this actually marks the 2nd such procedure at the hospital and the 4th worldwide. So this event, detailed by Harvard Medical School, builds on the hospital's groundbreaking work in March of 2024, when it performed the first ever pig-to-human kidney transplant. So the recipient, 66-year-old Tim Andrews from New Hampshire, received the transplant on January 25th, 2025, after suffering from end-stage kidney disease. The pig kidney, altered with 69 genetic edits by the company eGenesis, which that's a really interesting name considering the connection to the book of Genesis that describes the sins of fallen angels and creation of the Nephilim hybrids, began functioning within minutes during the two and a half hour surgery. Andrews, previously reliant on dialysis, left the hospital just a week later. The procedure is a product of years of research into what's called xenotransplantation, using animal organs to address human organ shortages. Now, of course, when we...
Yeah, Diane, we smelled a rat there, didn't we? All of us smelled the same rat.
We hear these stories, they are...
Even my daughter didn't get my grandkids jabbed because she knew it was dangerous. And I wasn't talking to her. She came up with that on her own before, and then she asked me what my opinion was. Yeah, she didn't even give her kids the vax. So I'm so happy.
Are always told with altruistic purposes. But us knowing Bible prophecy, where might this lead? Genesis 6:11 through 12 speaks of a world where all flesh had corrupted their way, leading to the flood, a judgment on unnatural corruption. Now, while this transplant is promoted as a scientific effort to save lives, I think it could still be seen as a rebellion against God, maybe, and it raises questions about our stewardship over God's creation as outlined in Genesis 1:28. Again, the watchers in First Enoch who mixed with humans and animals faced divine wrath for their hybrids. Here, the intent is said to be nothing more than just healing, yet the act of merging species could still feel uncomfortably familiar. And so this one is tough for me. Because of course we want to save lives, but at what cost? You know, you think about the other end of the argument. So what, was this guy supposed to just die if there wasn't another organ for him? I don't know, because I don't know the full story. I don't know the context. I don't know what got him in that position to begin with. You know, who knows? But would God approve of doing this if the only purpose was to save lives and not to create a new species of hybrid? Because it seems like the sins of the watchers, it seems like the reason they were creating hybrids, it wasn't to save lives, it was to
Is that in there, Diane? Is that the doctor on your link?
create new life because they were jealous of God. They wanted their own creation. That's what it seems like. Now, most of us would have no issue with human to human organ transplants. That happens all the time. But animal to human is obviously different. God gives us as humans permission to subdue the animals as described in Genesis, but would this include transplants like these? Honestly, it's a very difficult question, and one that is much different than messing around with mice and human genetics for experimentation and to create hybrids. So as of right now, I don't know that I have an easy answer for this one specifically, but I do believe it's something that we Christians should be thinking about and talking about. And in light of that, I would love to know what you think. Please leave me a comment in the comment section below. Tell us your thoughts on this. Let's get a conversation going about this, because this one I'm not so sure about. I need some more information about what's all entailed. You know, when I hear genetic editing and all that, I get nervous and I don't want anything to do with it. But again, I don't know if this is to each his own situation or if this is just all out. It's just all wrong. But again, I want to know your thoughts. Leave us a comment.
Hello, Josh Peck.
This is BritBox, the ultimate collection of British telly.
Sorry?
And this year, we are adding even more of the latest titles and new seasons of your favourite shows.
Sorry, but you are...
BritBox, the ultimate collection of British telly.
Similarities to the experiences of people who had received prophetic visions. They helped. My heart stopped for 5 minutes. The doctors desperately tried to bring me back. That Monday morning changed my life for.
This is a day old, and the heading is he died and was shown World War III by Jesus. Believers need to know this. We don't watch many of these, so let's see if he's legit.
Ever. I died and saw something I feel a deep urge to share, because no one is truly ready for what awaits us, but everyone needs to know. As usual, I was getting ready to go to work in the small shop I had opened a few months earlier. During my commute, I typically listened to the day's news, trying to stay informed during that uncertain period in 2025, so full of tensions and fears of imminent disasters. Uncertainty seemed to grow day by day, and I was constantly terrified at the thought of global catastrophe. After the news, I often turned to prediction videos, hoping to find similarities to the experiences of people who had received prophetic visions. They helped me mentally prepare, seeking a sense of control amid the chaos. That morning, however, something disrupted my usual routine. As I drove, lost in my thoughts and my regular listening habits, I noticed a car speeding recklessly, zigzagging along the road ahead of me. It didn't take long for the situation to spiral out of control, The car lost all traction, suddenly veering in my direction. Time seemed to slow down as I desperately tried to swerve to avoid it. The vehicle felt like a beast gone wild, and before I knew it, my car crashed full speed into a house fence. I felt the impact like a violent blow, and everything went black. The world disappeared, leaving me alone in deep darkness. People gathered, some shouting, others covering their mouths in horror. A man bent down over me, trying to find my pulse. I could see him, hear him speaking, but his voice seemed distant, as though coming through a glass barrier. A primal fear took hold of me. What was happening? Was I dying? Was I already dead? Before I could form an answer, I felt a presence beside me. I couldn't see anyone, but an invisible force seemed to...
Okay, so he's died and he's woken up wherever he is. I remember once I was running from something. Like, I'm going to be honest, I committed a crime and I was getting chased, and I'm running up these side streets, and I jumped the fence and I kept running. It was night time, and there was an in-ground pool, and I didn't see it. So I'm running through this backyard to jump the fence, and I ended up into this pool, and I thought I literally blew up. Like 1 minute I'm running, and next thing there's water, and I'm in the pool. I literally thought I blew up. I thought I died and got blown up. Crazy night. Yes, and he did catch me.
pull me away from the scene. I tried to resist, clinging desperately to the world I knew, but it was no use. The more I fought, the stronger that force became. Then came a voice, calm and deep, enveloping me like a maternal embrace. Relax, don't resist. I'm here to help you. Something about that voice disarmed me. It was impossible to fight against such calm. I let go, closed my eyes, and allowed myself to be pulled away, not knowing where I was going, but feeling I had no other choice. I found myself in a tunnel. It wasn't a physical place, or at least it didn't seem like one. The walls were dark, soft, as though made of smoke or solid shadows.
Okay, this tunnel they're talking about, I remember watching a video of this guy who had his eyes spiritually open all the time. And he said, if you look at the earth, there's like dozens of tornadoes getting around in the spiritual realm, catching the dead up into the tornadoes. So apparently, in the spiritual sense, that tunnel you go up, that there's tornadoes in the spiritual world going around. Yeah, crazy.
The only thing breaking that darkness was a point of white light on the horizon. I began moving toward it, not walking, but floating, as if propelled by an invisible current. As I approached, the tunnel filled with unsettling noises, a high-pitched sound like nails scraping metal, and a mournful whisper, almost a wail of pain. It was a cacophony that made me shiver. I closed my eyes to keep from being overwhelmed by terror, and after a while, the noises started to fade, leaving only silence. When I opened them again, the tunnel was gone, and I found myself in a place that seemed to belong to another world. The sky was a pure, impossible blue, and in front of me stretched an endless meadow, with grass so soft you'd want to lie down forever. I could hear water, a crystal clear stream flowing peacefully not far from where I stood. The air was perfect, neither hot nor cold, a gentle embrace that enveloped me entirely. I wasn't alone. Around me were luminous figures, resembling people yet different, wrapped in auras of light, with serene, almost inhumanly beautiful faces. They seemed happy, at peace, and their presence filled me with an indescribable joy. For a moment I thought it must be a dream, yet it felt incredibly real.
Shawnee, I go with Steve Triacolani on the horses. He said the white horse represented the medical profession, and the bow was a needle, and the crown was the coronavirus. He said it represented the medical field, and it ran for 3.5 years. And he said now we're into the red horse, and he said watch for fires. And we've just seen fires everywhere, fires and floods. They're all over the planet. So interesting.
Is this paradise? I thought. Before I could ask, a voice answered, sweet and reassuring. Yes, this is paradise. I've been waiting for you. I turned sharply, searching for the source of that voice, but saw no one. Who are you? Where are you? I asked. But the reply came again, clear, as if whispered right next to my ear. I am here. Always here. A wave of peace washed over me, yet a part of me couldn't help but wonder, why me? What really happened? I was still in that dark tunnel, an invisible current pushing me toward the light. But suddenly the sense of peace began to waver. The air changed, becoming heavy, oppressive, as though something dark and terrible was about to be revealed. I heard distant sounds, different from the eerie noises I had heard before. Explosions, screams, gunfire. I was being pushed toward something I didn't fully understand, but I knew it would be devastating. Then the light enveloped me, and everything changed. I was no longer in the tunnel. I was in a land I didn't recognize, under a gray sky choked by toxic clouds that blocked out the sun. The air smelled of burnt metal, and everywhere I looked there was destruction, collapsed skyscrapers, skeletons of concrete and steel, and streets once teeming with life now deserted, save for piles of rubble and the remains of abandoned vehicles. It was 2025, and instinctively I knew this wasn't my time. It was a vision of the future, a future that seemed almost unrecognizable. The scene shifted.
Okay, this is a day old. Why didn't they play this before 2025?
I now found myself in a ravaged city, looted supermarkets with completely empty shelves lining the streets. There were no colors anymore, only the grayness of dust and desolation. Groups of skeletal people roamed like ghosts, dressed in rags with faces carved by hunger and despair, trembling hands pushing one another, fighting over a piece of moldy bread or a...
They're probably the ones who wish for death and don't find it. That sounds like them. Gee, it's going to get bad.
Bottle of dirty water, clearly scarce. I saw an endless line of people stretching toward a tanker truck, guarded by armed soldiers, but the tension was palpable. Suddenly, the line turned into a tumult. A woman holding a child desperately tried to approach the truck, only to be violently pushed back. Someone screamed, and within moments a brawl erupted. The soldiers fired, and the chaos turned into a bloody scene, as if water had become more precious than gold. The lack of resources had reduced people to beasts willing to do anything to survive. Above me, the sky suddenly lit up, but it wasn't the sun. It was an explosion. A column of flames rose in the distance, followed by a shockwave that obliterated everything in its path. I was safe, like an invisible observer, but I could feel the heat and terror of that moment.
Wow.
I moved automatically toward the site of the explosion and saw what was left of it, an immense crater surrounded by smoking rubble. It was clear this wasn't a conventional bomb, but something new, something more powerful, a technology I had never seen before. It was almost as if the very air had been scorched, leaving behind a deadly void. And then I understood. I was witnessing a war fought with next-generation weapons, weapons designed to completely annihilate the enemy, leaving no chance of escape. Silent black drones streaked through the sky like flocks of predatory birds. Each was armed with explosive charges capable of striking with lethal precision. I watched them dart between buildings, relentlessly pursuing human targets. There was no escape. People tried to hide, but the drones seemed
Human targets? Who's the people behind the drones then?
to know exactly where to look. In the distance, I noticed another kind of weapon. It was silent, yet just as devastating. I saw men and women suddenly collapse without so much as a scream. Some clutched their necks, unable to breathe. Then I realized it was a chemical attack. An invisible mist was slowly spreading, poisoning the air and water, and no one was safe. The scene shifted again. Now I found myself in a kind of underground shelter. The air was stifling, the ceiling low, and the concrete walls damp and cracked. Dozens of people had gathered, some sitting on the dirty floor, others huddled in corners. Children were crying, their voices weak and exhausted. A man was speaking to a small group in a grave but steady tone. "The food is almost gone," he said. And we have to ration the water too. We can't afford to go out during the day anymore. The drones patrol the streets at night. Maybe we can try to salvage something, but we'll have to move in small groups. His words were full of
Who's behind the drones?
despair, but also determination. I realized these people were fighting to survive in a world that had abandoned them. How long will it last? A woman with a newborn in her arms asked. How long before we disappear too? The man didn't answer. His silent expression spoke louder than words. I returned to the surface. This time I was in the middle of a battle. I saw soldiers in futuristic armor, their bodies covered by metallic exoskeletons that made them faster and stronger. They carried rifles I had never seen before, capable of firing bursts of energy that cut through metal like butter. But even they weren't invincible. The drones surrounded them, and within moments...
Okay, so their rifles are laser shooters. That's interesting as well.
The entire unit was wiped out. And then, above all, I heard a voice. It wasn't the calm and reassuring voice that had guided me so far. It was somber, like distant thunder.
Are you and Jax doing the walk this weekend?
My legs are aching, even kept me up last night.
I use Revive. Revive boosts circulation.
SBC is giving away a share of 1.5 million Minecraft. Buy SBC Minecraft products to enter.
This is the fate that awaits humanity if it continues down this path. The voice seemed to come from everywhere, filling the air. But not all is lost. There are still possibilities. The war can be prevented, but it requires change. Change that begins with each of you. I wanted to ask, how can we stop all this? But before I could, the images began to fade. The gray sky, the explosions, the suffering, all of it was slowly dissolving, leaving me with one certainty. Earth's future hung by a thread, and every choice would have immense consequences. I was still in that place between dream and reality, with the weight of the choice pressing on my heart. I had seen scenarios that defied my understanding, yet I knew I couldn't ignore them. As I searched for an answer within myself, the light around me changed. It grew brighter, warmer, almost tangible, and with it came a presence. It was no longer just a voice. Before me appeared a figure. It was a man, or at least he seemed so. His face was youthful, but his eyes held a depth I couldn't explain. They seemed to know everything about me. Every thought, every fear, every secret. His beard was short and neatly trimmed. His hair nearly reached his shoulders, but what struck me most was the aura surrounding him. A glow that didn't hurt my eyes. A light that radiated peace and love. His white tunic seemed made of a fabric I had never seen on earth. Pure, immaculate, as if woven from the very light itself. His hands were open, palms facing me, and only then did I notice the scars. Deep, one on each palm, like ancient wounds that had never fully healed. His feet bore similar marks, but they didn't convey pain. Instead, everything about him exuded strength and compassion.
Okay, they've only ever found one bone with a nail in it that was from a crucifixion. That's all they ever found. And the nail to the cross that went through the heel. Like Jesus' feet were crucified on top of each other. They were crucified at the heel on each side of the cross. It wasn't one nail to do two legs. Because how can you do that? How can you nail through one leg and get in the hold still and then go through another leg? That don't make sense. So they done it on the heel, not the top of the foot, which makes it painful.
Are you Jesus? I asked, my voice trembling. I'm not a Christian, nor is my family, I continued, but something inside me knew exactly who I was facing. I am, he replied with a gentle smile. His voice was the same one I had heard from the beginning, but now it carried an even deeper warmth, as if every word was a caress for my soul. Why are you here? Why are you showing me these things? The time has come to choose, he said. Your life on earth is over, but your heart is still divided. You have the opportunity to decide, stay here, where there is no suffering, or return and face the path that lies ahead. When he took my hand, a profound warmth enveloped me. Not just a physical sensation, but also a spiritual relief, as if all my fears and uncertainties were temporarily erased. At that moment, the world around me changed. I found myself watching the scene of my funeral. My mother, dressed in black, clutched a photo of me, her face distorted by grief. My father stood beside her, his expression frozen, almost vacant. The inability to accept my death had paralyzed him. Then I saw my wife. The suffering in her eyes cut through my soul like a blade.
You gotta
Our
go
son,
back.
still too young to understand, appeared calm, but was already marked by my absence. If you choose to stay, said Jesus, this is the reality they will face. They will lose your love, your guidance, and their journey will be harder, but they will find a way to move forward.
Okay, there's no way he didn't go back to his family.
Life without you will be a more difficult path, but not an impossible one. The images changed. Now my wife was with another man, but her life had not become more peaceful. The new husband turned out to be violent. Their home had become a prison. For her and our son, hope seemed to have vanished.
Wow.
Meanwhile, my parents lived in anguish, unable to accept my loss, trapped in a spiral of pain that drew them away from their faith. Every fragment of life I had left behind had darkened, becoming a place of suffering and resentment. Jesus spoke again. Your love was a light in their lives, and without you, that light is lost. You must consider that your absence will not come without consequences. Every choice carries a price, and now is the time to make your decision. I remained silent.
Yeah, but everyone else pays the price. There's no way he's going to stay.
As the visions faded, finding myself back in the peaceful meadow from before. The wind brushed against my face, and the scent of the grass seemed to soothe the whirlwind of emotions I was feeling. Why do I have to decide? I asked, my voice trembling, tears burning my eyes. Because the freedom to choose is the greatest gift you have been given, Jesus replied. Your journey is unique, and only you can determine its direction. What you choose to do will affect not only your soul, but also the lives of those you loved. Yet another question tormented me. In the world, I had seen images of a destructive war. Is that what awaits us? Jesus nodded, his expression growing more serious. The future of humanity is uncertain. There will be moments of great suffering, but also of great redemption. Every life has an impact, even yours. If you choose to return, you can play your part, even if small, to make the world a better place. It is not just a personal choice, but one that will have consequences you cannot yet imagine. But the more I thought about it, the more I felt certain that I wasn't ready to leave everything behind. Not yet, I said, looking into Jesus' eyes. I want to go back. I can't leave my family. I have to be there for them, no matter what. Jesus smiled. It's a courageous choice, but remember, the path will not be easy. There will be suffering, sacrifices, but you will never be alone. He took my hand again, and this time the light around us grew so intense that I had to close my eyes. I felt the world shift once more. Then a sudden pain pierced my body like a bolt of lightning, spreading through every nerve. I could feel the weight of my own body, heavy, oppressive, as if my return to reality was an act of pure force. The air was dense, hot, and dirty. With difficulty, I opened my eyes, and the first thing I saw was the sky. A terribly familiar gray sky, covered by a haze, without a trace of the perfect blue I had just left behind. My body lay on the asphalt, surrounded by faces I didn't recognize. Sirens wailed in the distance, and someone shouted orders. He's coming back. Breathe. Breathe. My vision was blurred, but I understood I was exactly where the accident had happened. The asphalt beneath me was rough, dirty, and I felt a sharp pain in my right leg. I tried to move it, but it was no use. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. "Don't move," said a voice from above. A paramedic in uniform added, "You were in an accident. We're taking you to the hospital. You're alive, do you understand? You're alive." Alive. Alive. Echoed in my mind. I had come back. I had chosen to return. I tried to speak, to respond, but the words wouldn't come. My mouth was dry, and a metallic taste of blood filled my throat. I wanted to ask about my wife and child, but I could only stare at the sky, trying to recall Jesus' face and the peace I had felt just moments earlier. The ambulance sped through the city streets. I felt every jolt, every turn, as if my body were a fragile, empty shell. The paramedics worked frantically on me, but their voices seemed distant, muffled. All I could think of were the images: my son's face, my wife's smile, the scars on Jesus' hands. Time seemed to flow strangely. One moment I was in the ambulance, the next in a white room, surrounded by intense lights and masked faces. Surgeons, nurses, all moving with precision, speaking in a medical language I didn't understand. All I knew was that they were fighting to save me, to keep me alive. When I opened my eyes again, silence enveloped me. There were no more sirens, no frantic voices, only the rhythmic beep of a machine beside me. The first face I saw was my wife's, her eyes swollen with tears, but a faint, trembling smile on her lips. "You're here," she whispered, taking my hand. "You're back." I couldn't hold back my tears. It was real. She was real. I tried to speak, but she shook her head. "Don't strain yourself. You're still healing." Only then did I understand the gravity of the situation. I felt my broken body, but the strongest pain came from my right leg, or rather, what was left of it. Slowly, I turned my gaze and saw that it was gone. My leg ended just above the knee, wrapped in white bandages.
What's the
The
streamer?
sight hit me like a punch in the stomach.
Oh, hang
There had
on.
been no way to save it. My wife said, her voice breaking, "But you're alive, and that's all that matters. You're alive, and it's a miracle. Truly a miracle." I knew she was right. I had been closer to death than anyone could imagine, and I had chosen to return. But now that I was here, with a
Di, what do you mean you sent me a streamer? I don't understand.
body that was no longer the same, I wondered if I had made the right choice. I had lost a part of myself, and yet I knew I had gained something far greater. The following weeks were a mixture of pain, rehabilitation, and introspection. Every day was a struggle, not only to adjust to my new physical condition, but also to come to terms with what I had experienced. I couldn't talk about it with anyone, not even my wife. How could I explain what I had seen? No one would believe me. They'd think I'd gone mad because of the accident. But one night, as my wife slept beside me, I found myself staring at the ceiling, praying. I had never been a religious man. Growing up in an agnostic family had taught me to distrust concepts like God and faith. Yet now everything had changed. I knelt down despite the pain, and I prayed for the strength to move forward. I didn't know exactly whom I was speaking to, but I knew someone was listening, and it was then that I heard the voice again, the same voice that had guided me through the tunnel. "You are not alone, and you never will be." I burst into tears, but they were not tears of despair. They were tears of recognition, as if my soul had finally found its home. In that moment, I understood that my life no longer belonged only to me. Every day I would live, every word, every gesture, could become a spark for someone else, a seed of hope in the heart of someone who had stopped believing. From that day on, I began to write, not for fame, not for glory, but to bear witness. Every morning, before the sun rose, I opened my notebook and let the memory of that light guide my hand. I wrote for those who had lost everything, for those who no longer saw meaning, for those, like me, who needed to know that death is not the end, and that faith is not an illusion, but a calling. My leg will not grow back, the pain will not disappear, but something incorruptible has been born within me. Every time I look into my son's eyes, every time my wife holds my hand and I feel her strength, I know I made the right choice. It's not easy, but I am not alone. And now, if you are reading these words with a trembling heart, know that you are not alone either. Someone knows you. Someone loves you. And he is just waiting for you to open the door.
Check this out, guys. These must have been the Titans from the Bible or the Greek pantheon. The Titans, they're like hundreds of feet tall. I will die, I gotta do it, otherwise I'll lose track of you guys. Right?
I forgot your ginger beer.
In Russell Crowe's movie Noah, they have stone watches. They have the watches helping build the ark, and they're made of stone like these guys. Wow, look at that. I wonder if they were getting around in Noah's age. They must have been around when Noah was around. Wow. It's even holding a weapon. Check that out. Unbelievable. Tell me that's not Godzilla. That is Godzilla. Check it out. That looks like a female one. Come on. Diane, that's just creepy and calling it just meat. Wow. was crazy. Let's check out this one. This one looks interesting. Jewish rabbi dies, comes back screaming one name. Let's see if it's any good.
What do you want to be when you grow up?
With ease,
Not a little brat like you.
expertise, and great value. Know how to grow with UniSuper.
Where his soul had already crossed into another realm. What he saw shattered everything he thought he knew. A devout Jewish scholar, David had rejected Jesus his entire life, until he met him face to face beyond death. This isn't just a near-death experience. It's a radical revelation that turned a rabbi's world upside down.
My name is David Cohen. I was born into an Orthodox Jewish family in Brooklyn, New York. From the time I could walk, I was raised in the rhythm of tradition, morning prayers with my father, Hebrew school in the afternoons, Shabbat dinners that stretched into the night with discussions about Torah and Talmud around the table. Faith wasn't just something we believed, it was who we were. It shaped every moment, every decision, every breath. By my early 20s, I knew I wanted to become a rabbi. Not for prestige, not for power, but because the Torah had captured my soul. It was more than scripture to me. It was divine architecture. Every letter, every pause, every law was infused with purpose. I believed the Torah was God's direct revelation to the Jewish people, and I had made it my mission to understand it as deeply as possible, and to teach it to others with accuracy and reverence. I spent years in yeshiva studying day and night, memorizing not only the Torah but the Mishnah, the Talmud, and the writings of our sages. My teachers were men of great discipline and insight, and I did everything I could to follow in their footsteps. Eventually, I was ordained and took a position as a congregational rabbi. My days were filled.
Check that out. Just drop a bomb on that golden dome. Just drop a bomb on it. What can they do once you've blown it up? They can't rebuild it.
With study, teaching, pastoral care, and leading our community in prayer and practice. I loved my people. I loved our traditions. I loved the responsibility that came with guiding others in the ways of our ancestors. I never took it lightly. I believed in the covenant, the one given to Abraham, reaffirmed through Moses. That covenant defined who we were, a chosen people, bound by law, tradition, and identity. As for Christianity, it was never something I hated or mocked. In fact, I had Christian friends growing up, and I admired their commitment to family and prayer. But I viewed their faith as misaligned. Sincere, perhaps, but built on theological errors. Jesus, to me, was a Jewish teacher who became the center of a religion that veered off course. The Messiah was supposed to bring lasting peace, rebuild the temple, restore the exiles, not die on a Roman cross. That didn't make sense to me. When Christians would try to speak to me about Jesus, I would listen politely, but always decline further conversation. Sometimes I'd offer a respectful counterpoint from the Torah, just to clarify our position, but never with anger or contempt. I wasn't anti-Christian. I simply believed they were wrong. I saw Jesus as a historical figure, not the Messiah, not divine. I believed in one God, indivisible and eternal, and in a faith built on mitzvot, commandments, not on grace or atonement through a man. I felt confident in that belief, grounded. My certainty wasn't arrogance. It came from decades of study, prayer, and spiritual wrestling. I had built a life on truth, or so I thought. I was a man of discipline, conviction, and integrity. My heart was sincere. My devotion was real. And I never once imagined that anything could shake it, until the day everything changed. My life followed a steady rhythm, a sacred pattern etched into time by generations before me. I would wake before sunrise, wrap tefillin around my arm and forehead, and whisper the morning prayers with intention. Each word of the Shema, each blessing from the Amidah, was spoken not from routine but from devotion. After prayer, I'd join a small group of men at our synagogue for Torah study before breakfast. We'd argue in love, debating interpretations, wrestling with commentaries from Rashi, Rambam, and the sages of old. These sessions were the lifeblood of my mind. They sharpened my thinking and deepened my awe for God's wisdom. Most of my mornings were spent preparing lessons. I taught in our synagogue's Beit Midrash, guiding young men through complex passages in the Talmud, always emphasizing kavana, intentionality, in their learning. I pushed them not just to recite, but to understand, to challenge, to absorb the heartbeat of the law. Afternoons were for counseling. Congregants would come in with questions, sometimes practical, sometimes existential. I'd help a young couple navigate the rules of Taharat Hamish Pacha, family purity, sit with a grieving widow reciting Tehillim, or mediate disputes with care and fairness. These moments grounded me. I wasn't just a scholar, I was a shepherd. At home, life was warm but modest. My wife, Miriam, was my anchor, steadfast, wise, and deeply spiritual. She lit Shabbat candles with tears in her eyes every Friday evening. We raised 3 children together in observance and love. They went to Jewish schools, learned Hebrew from an early age, and never once ate outside our kosher kitchen. Friday afternoons were always special. The whole house transformed, clean, quiet.
Mate, get on the vision. Get on the heaven vision.
Filled with the smells of challah and roasted chicken. We gathered and up straighter, but the pain surged like a wave crashing through my chest. My knees buckled. I collapsed into the dining room chair, clutching my chest. Miriam's face changed from concern to panic. She grabbed her phone and called emergency services. Her voice trembled but stayed composed as she gave our address. The next few minutes were chaos. My breathing turned labored. Sweat poured down my face. I felt like my entire body was folding in on itself. The pain wasn't sharp. It was crushing, like an iron weight pressing me down. I wanted to pray, but I couldn't form the words. I wanted to tell Miriam I was sorry, that I loved her, but even that was beyond me. Paramedics burst into the house and began working quickly. I could hear them talking, but it felt like they were far away. Their voices were muffled, their faces distorted. One of them asked if I could hear him. I tried to nod, but my body wouldn't respond. As they lifted me onto the stretcher, I caught one last glimpse of Miriam. She stood frozen near the doorway, her hand over her mouth, tears streaming down her cheeks. And then everything faded. The pain, the noise, the light, just silence. And then nothing. The next thing I remember was weightlessness. No pain, no sound, no panic, just stillness. At first, I thought I had blacked out. But then I noticed something strange. I was aware. Not just vaguely conscious, but fully aware, more than I'd ever been before. My senses were sharp, heightened, yet I couldn't feel my body. I wasn't lying down. I wasn't standing. I wasn't anywhere. And then I saw it. Below me, yes, below, was a scene I should never have been able to witness. 2 paramedics hovering over a man on a stretcher in my dining room. One was pressing rhythmically on his chest, the other shouting numbers and instructions, preparing defibrillator pads. It took only a moment to realize the man on the stretcher was me. My first reaction wasn't fear. It was confusion. Deep, disorienting confusion. How was I seeing myself from above? How was I hearing the paramedics' voices, clear but distant, like I was submerged underwater? I saw Miriam, crouched in the hallway, praying with her face buried in her hands. I wanted to scream her name, to tell her I was okay, or at least here. But when I tried, nothing came out. No voice. No sound. I didn't even feel breath. I tried to move closer, to reach out, but there was no arm to extend. My presence just hovered, like a thought that couldn't land. The scene felt both immediate and far away. I was watching it unfold, but it no longer felt like mine. I saw my own body, pale, limp, lifeless, and I felt a strange mix of detachment and grief. It wasn't horror, it was sorrow. Not for myself, but for the people still caught in that moment. Miriam, the paramedics, my children who didn't yet know what was happening. I began to grasp what was happening. I was outside of my body. Not metaphorically. Literally. I don't know how long I remained there. Time seemed irrelevant, like I was existing outside of it. I kept watching the paramedics, now using paddles. I saw my body jolt from the shock. One of them cursed under his breath. Another checked for a pulse, shook his head, and began compressions again. We're losing him, someone said. But I'm right here, I thought. I'm not gone. I'm right here. Still, I couldn't make them hear me. I couldn't even make me move. A strange calm began to settle over me. Not comfort, just quiet.
Wow.
I wasn't panicking anymore. I wasn't trying to fight it.
Diane, that's another coincidence. I had a guy friend me on Facebook. I accepted the friend and I said, and on Messenger I said, where do I know you? And he's actually a drug seller, and he says he can get mushrooms and I can't get. Yeah, I'm just surprised you brought up magic mushies, because I don't know how I'm not doing nothing with him. I don't know who he is, but it's just a coincidence. He mentions magic mushies, and you mention them now. So coincidences.
I just watched, detached. And in that stillness, something began to change. The room around me grew dimmer. Not darker, just less real. The urgency of the scene faded into the background, like a TV slowly being muted. I felt myself pulling away, not dragged, but gently drawn. And I knew, somehow, deep inside, that I was crossing a threshold. Whatever came next, I was no longer tethered to the world I had known. As I drifted further from the scene below, the edges of my awareness began to dissolve. The walls of my home, the flashing lights of the ambulance, the frantic movements of the paramedics, all of it faded like mist under the sun. What replaced it wasn't darkness. It was something else entirely. Light. But not light like we know it. This light wasn't from a lamp or the sun. It didn't shine on things. It was the space. It didn't cast shadows. It didn't have a source. It surrounded me, filled me, invited me. It was alive. That's the only way I can describe it. The light had presence. It wasn't just brightness. It was intelligence. Warm, aware, welcoming. It pulsed gently, like it breathed. And with every pulse, I felt something deeper settle into me.
I get it.
Peace, clarity, and love in its purest form. The warmth of it was overwhelming, not like heat, but like being known and still embraced. It reached into every part of me, even the places I didn't know were there. My fear began to melt away. The sorrow I felt floating above my body was still there, but now it was wrapped in comfort.
Yeah, I don't think a church would be giving away magic mushies. They're not a church like we follow. I've never had mushies. I've had LSD and DMT, which are the same. And yeah, they're very dangerous. They open up dimensions you don't want to go into.
Like a parent holding a crying child. There was no sound in the traditional sense, but the space itself spoke. Not in words, but in knowing. I felt it, like a quiet message etched into the air around me. Come closer. That simple invitation stirred something in me. A pull, not forceful, but irresistible. I hesitated. Not from fear, exactly, but from uncertainty. I had spent my entire life studying what comes after death, and yet I never imagined this. This wasn't Gone Eden the way I had envisioned it. This wasn't the soul's rest or a heavenly courtroom. It was more. I had never doubted the existence of God, but I had always pictured him as beyond reach, wrapped in mystery and holiness so great we could never draw too near. This light, this presence, was holy, yes, but not distant. It was near, intimate. It knew me, and that terrified me. Not because it was harsh, but because it was real. I could feel it examining me, not with judgment, but with total clarity. It knew who I was, not just what I had done, but who I had become over the years. And yet, I felt no condemnation, only invitation. Still, I resisted. A small voice inside me, the one trained by years of Torah study, by careful lines and halakhic texts, by lectures and books and boundaries, whispered that this didn't fit. that something was off, that I had no framework for what I was seeing. But another voice, deeper and more honest, spoke too. This is truth. This is what you've been longing for. I couldn't deny that. The light didn't contradict the God I had worshipped. It felt like his fullness, as though the veils I had always looked through were being gently pulled back. And within that light, I sensed another presence, not separate, but distinct. Someone. I didn't see a face yet, but I knew someone was there, watching, waiting, not with impatience, but with the calm of someone who had always known this moment would come. The feeling